Deemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, this Monday edition. I hope you had a great weekend. Guys, here's what I want to do. I want to break down the Twitter files, the Twitter dump, Twitter gate, whatever you want to call it. What Elon Musk has done is nothing short, in my opinion, of straight up bravery. The guy from accounts or reports that I've read are he's getting death threats like nobody's business. And just imagine, I mean, what we're witnessing is the power of free speech. This is why our founding fathers understood the importance of free speech, right? Without free speech, you cannot have a free society. You can't have a civilized society, if you can't have debate. And also, you can't have the best ideas rise to the top of a civilization in order to make life better for everyone. That's what free speech has done. The ability to be able to worship freely as you please, the ability to be able to get information so that a tyrannical government cannot take over the country. All of these things make freedom of speech so important. And what Elon Musk has done cannot be understated. Before I get into depth with this, and I want to go over some, I'm going to go over some headlines. But before I do, I want to please ask you to subscribe to the podcast. I really appreciate those that did or have already subscribed. But if you haven't, please go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com, theCarlJacksonShow.com, or wherever you get your podcast. Please also follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm loving the action on Twitter right now. And you can find me on Twitter at Carl Jackson Show. You can find me on Getter. I actually really like Getter too. At Carl Jackson Show. True Social is a great platform. I'm there. The Carl Jackson Show. But if you type in The Carl Jackson Show, you'll be able to find me anywhere on social media. And I don't want you to forget the people that make this podcast possible, besides Gabe Cassiano, that you can never see and barely hear because he hardly ever speaks up because I'm so brilliant. He doesn't want to get in my way, and I do appreciate that, Gabe. All right. But also, I want to tell you to support MyPillow, Mike Lindell at MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell, the great CEO and founder of MyPillow, who's offering all of us a great night's sleep, plus many more products. And the guy's a patriot. All right. So please support his company. Please support American manufacturing, American jobs, and get products that you love and support this podcast. You can't beat that with a bat. Right now, MyPillow is offering exclusive offers on their bed sheets, their 6-piece towel set, and even offering an extended 60-day money-back guarantee. Orders placed now through December 25th will now have an extended money-back guarantee all the way through March 1st. You can't beat that with a bat. The bed sheets, are marked down as low as $29.98. And believe me when I tell you, you will get a great night's sleep on those bed sheets. Their 6-piece towel set is made with USA cotton. Comes with 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths. They typically retail at $89.98. But for my listeners, they're only $39.98. All you have to do is use the promo code Carl. Go to mypillow.com. Click on the radio listener square at the top of the page, enter my name, CARL, or give them a call, 1-800-858-0263. That is 1-800-858-0263. Use that promo code Carl. And guys, there are all types of products available, some up to 66% off. So don't think you have to stop with these towels. I mean, there are slippers, there are dog beds, you name it. There are products on there. Lots of products. Just enter that promo code Carl to get the deal of your dreams, and right in time for Christmas. All right, guys, let's get to the story at hand. What Elon Musk is doing cannot be understated. I do want to read a couple of headlines if my laptop will stop freezing and allow me to do so. Let me go to my phone here. Hopefully I can pull this up, but I just want to share with you some headlines that I've been scrolling through this morning that I think prove how essential. And of course, I don't have it pulled up on my laptop. All right, so let me try to let me try to X out of this and see if I can reboot this computer to pull up these headlines. I'm sorry, I'm working on the fly for you guys, doing everything possible to get this up, but here's the deal. Here's what I think about Elon Musk. Guys, you guys know, and I've said this time and time again. I don't have to offer this, I don't think, anymore as a caveat, but I wasn't a big fan of Elon Musk. I shouldn't say him per se, because obviously I don't know the guy, but I didn't know where his heart was, and I don't believe in the whole EV revolution. I understand the science behind electrical vehicles, and I'm simply not a fan. They don't do what they claim they do, and they don't save the environment from waste and abuse and CO2 emissions, which aren't bad. All right, guys, we need CO2 in order to breathe as human beings. So they don't do any of that stuff. And so as a result of that, I've just never been the biggest fan of his, but I realize over time, I've realized that this is a guy that really seems to buy into this, into this EV stuff. So I'm like, okay, I can't fault him there if he truly believes it. Apparently he does. All right. So I'm not going to fault him there. What he's done for free speech, in my opinion, is the biggest thing that he will probably ever do. And I know SpaceX, I get it. Tesla, if you love Tesla, I get it. If you're one of these environmentalists, I get it. You love him for those reasons. But I love him for what he's doing for free speech. And this almost seems too good to be true at times. But when you're risking your life, when you're getting death threats as reported, I don't think it can be understated that this guy may have just saved free speech in America. And beyond free speech, I seriously feel like this guy has, what's the word that I'm looking for? I seriously feel, in the sense, he's given the world a new opportunity to thrive without going to war. Man, I can't believe this. My laptop is still freezing up. It is the most frustrating thing. So I wanted to get to some different headlines for you guys, but it doesn't look like I'll be able to do so. But here, let me share this. We all know what's happening in China. China is now, there's a report out of, I'm just going off of memory now since my computer is locked up, but China now is reporting that they are going to minimize their stranglehold when it comes to these COVID zero restrictions. The reason why that's happening is because they get a taste of free speech. The people, the protesters, the paper revolution got a taste of free speech. Free speech cannot be understated. What Elon Musk is doing cannot be understated. Now, I get it. China is still a dictatorial regime. That's what they are, the CCP. They rule everything. But were it not for those videos getting out before China was able to suppress them, I don't think that these people would have gotten the, obviously not the attention, but perhaps the CCP wouldn't have calmed down or agreed to at least relinquish some of the restrictions when it comes to their zero COVID policies, because it's absolutely insane. That is the power of free speech. The power of free speech as it exists in Iran or Iran, however you pronounce it. I say Iran because I'm an American. All right, so how it exists in Iran. All right, with the protests that strung up there with the result of the morality police killing that young lady, and forgive me, I forget her name at the time and my computer froze up so I can't go retrieve it, but the protests that sprung up there as a result of people hearing about this, and then the videos that have emerged or that had emerged of the protests. Now, obviously, they're continuing to suppress that, and sadly, many people have died for the cause of freedom in Iran. But there's news now that the morality police that first, I believe that beat her, and this is what makes me so frustrated, has been suspended. Now, he should be shot dead. All right, get it, but suspended. Apparently, in that area of the world, that is big news. That's huge, and we can thank. That's all part of free speech. But listen, I think Elon Musk has possibly saved free speech. I tweeted about this today. Or likely saved free speech. He showed what real journalism is and what real journalism looks like. I remember Sean Hannity for years. I got to give him the credit because he's been saying it the longest from what I can recall. probably for over a decade, has been talking about how journalism is dead. And I think all of us have come to this realization, and I believe the same. That's why I got into this business, but I didn't understand the degree to which it was dead, where there's not even a desire anymore for people that seem to graduate from journalism school, if you will, within these institutions, college and university campuses, to actually report the truth, to actually do real news. It's all biased. Now, you expect it to be biased for me, right? Because I am a conservative. I'm a constitutional restorationist now. I got to get used to calling myself that. But I vote Republican. I have a conservative bent. All right. I happen to be a Christian, so I have a biblical worldview. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm imperfect, but the Bible, the Constitution shapes my worldview. I make no bones about that. I don't hide that from you. And that's what you can expect to hear from me when you tune into this podcast or when I fill in for some of the national hosts. That's what you can expect to hear. But journalism is dead in America, and now we're seeing it exposed by this Twittergate, or the Twitter files that were released by Elon Musk, and then this Twitter thread that Matt Taibbi reported on. But he's exposed big tech. He's exposed the DNC. He's exposed Elon Musk he's exposed corporate media as the real purveyors of disinformation. So consider that. Elon Musk may have saved free speech. He showed the world what real journalism looks like, hopefully, perhaps sparking and encouraging young journalists to rise up and just report the truth. We're not asking them to be biased. We're not asking them to be conservative. We're not asking them to be liberal unless they're commentators, and that is the way they get paid for writing opinions or speaking opinions. But if they call themselves journalists, tell the truth. Report the news. That's all Elon Musk is doing. Twitter is becoming the place to be again on all things social media. You got to give the guy props. He seems to know what he's doing. Now, I do want to share with you a couple of headlines that were exposed in the Daily Wire. Again, continuing with this theme on how important free speech is and how important it is. And we shouldn't have to count on some big tech billionaire, all right? I totally get that. I don't like being in this compromising position. But essentially, what Elon Musk has done has given Twitter back to the people because it is the world's premier public forum. So for that, I'm truly thankful. You can only hope that this guy isn't a left-wing radical somewhere deep down in his gut, but he doesn't appear to be. I don't think he would be doing this if he were, to be fair. So this is a headline that I saw on Daily Wire before I get into, and I'm going to delve into thoroughly Twittergate, so you know fully what happened after Elon Musk and Matt Taibbi released these threads, if you will, of Twitter. Basically Twitter censoring free speech, all leading up to censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story, leading up to the 2020 election. It began on October 14th of 2020. However, before I get to that, I just want you to understand the impact. Daily Wire leaked email alleges Arizona Governor-elect Katie Hobbs' Twitter employees colluded to censor, quote, election-related misinformation. So you're talking about Katie Hobbs, the governor that did not campaign at all, or she barely campaigned and did not debate Kari Lake in Arizona, who happened to, quote unquote, win the election out there. Guess what? Bombshell. She used Twitter for some censorship purposes of her own. The internal documents at Twitter reveal Arizona Governor-elect and Secretary of State Katie Hobbs allegedly colluded with former Twitter officials last year by flagging accounts related to so-called election misinformation. The bombshell leak comes as amid Elon Musk releasing internal company communications through journalist Matt Taibbi late last week, showing the company had previously censored conservatives at the behest of the Democrat Party. Man, talking about an unfair advantage. According to an email on January 7, 2021, the communications director for Hobbs' Secretary of State office emailed the Center for Internet. So she was the Secretary of State her office emailed the Center for Internet Security, a 501 nonprofit security organization, saying they are, quote, flagging an unidentified Twitter profile for review under the subject line titled election-related misinformation. So you have this lady working, Katie Hobbs, working in government capacity. She reaches out to a 501 nonprofit cybersecurity organization saying they are flagging an unidentified Twitter profile, a private citizen, for review under the subject line titled election-related misinformation. Government reaching in to the real world or to the private sector, that is a big no-no. The email also included an unknown employee at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, according to the report, a branch under the federal government's Department of Homeland Security. A representative with CIS then forwarded the message to a Twitter employee saying, quote, please see this report below from the Arizona SOS office. Please let me know if you have any questions. The Twitter employee then sent another email saying, thank you both. Tweets have been removed from the service, close quote. Wowzers. Now, forgive me, I had to read that simply because I just saw that headline reported earlier. Let me see if real quickly, if I can pop up some other headlines that I think are completely relevant to the here they are. Nick Sandmann. You guys remember Nick Sandmann? He went to Washington, D.C. and that fake protester, the activist, the Native American or Indian activist got in his face or beating those drums or whatever it was. And he just stood there. And then the media, the left-wing media, mainstream media came after Nick Sandmann and said he was racist and invoking this, all this kind of nonsense. They just went after this kid, this young kid that was simply there. He had a Make America Great Again cap on. And this Indian guy was ridiculing him, mocking him in his face, beating these drums. The kid stayed there with, just smiling, not knowing what to do. Anyway, he won some money, basically, and I'm glad. But now he's calling out Elon Musk to release documents on threats Twitter allowed to be made against him. So you can't make a threat on Twitter, allegedly. So if you're a conservative or whatever, you can't make a threat. But if you're good with the left, if you're down with the left, if you're cool with the left, you're cool with the Democrat Party, you can do whatever, or you could have done whatever the hell you want on Twitter. So now it's time to look into this. But this is what these people were able to get away with. Now, having said that, here's, again, I set the precedent, or I set the table. I believe Elon Musk, at least thus far, has perhaps saved free speech in America. It certainly looks like that, right? Because now all the left can do is try to hide the truth from us. And as we at least have Twitter, we can show people, we can expose news stories, because let's face it, social media is the public square. Twitter, probably the biggest public square there is when it comes to social media and showing and sharing news and information. All right. So it's absolutely huge. So I think that he, in part, saved free speech. He showed what real journalism is, and he exposed big tech. He exposed the mainstream media, and he exposed the DNC for the corrupt little punks that they are, all colluding together in order to censor patriots, in order to censor Republicans, conservatives, in order to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story so that their guy could win the White House. Man, absolutely insane. All right, so now here's the crux of the issue so that you understand it from get to go, what exactly happened. And the Heritage Foundation broke it down very well. If you go onto my Twitter account at Carl Jackson Show, there were a total of 36 threads that were released on Friday, given to reporter Matt Taibbi by Elon Musk. If you go to my Twitter thread at Carl Jackson Show, I have every single one of those if you want to take the time to read them. I literally, I'm a nerd like that, so I went through them. I'm not going to go through all of them on this podcast because I don't want to bore you to death, but it was very important information. So I'll just give you some of the highlights and the summary, if you will, because the Heritage Foundation summed it up very well. All right, so here's the summary. Twitter CEO Elon Musk teased a massive reveal on Friday afternoon that all of us are aware of by now. Journalist Matt Taibbi released the Twitter thread revealing the confusion that existed at the social media giant at the time that it censored the New York Post story of Hunter Biden's laptop leading up to the 2020 election. All right, so here's the top Twitter executives didn't even have a good explanation or reason to censor the story. They just seemingly wanted to do it, but we'll get into the crux of that as well. They were stuck with the decision. They stuck with the decision anyway, despite not having a good explanation or reason to censor the story. Except I believe the reason is they're a bunch of Democrats. We'll get into that. It also showed that Republican and Democratic congressional staff weighed in against the move. So both Republican and Democratic congressional staffers, that's going to be an important word, staffers, and I'll tell you why later, but weighed in against the move. And so they were able to communicate with some of the executives at Twitter on both sides of the aisle. I want to be fair about this, so I want to report that so that you're aware of that. Both sides of the aisle were able to report to Twitter execs and say, hey, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? Hey, don't do this. So both sides were able to do that. But there's a reason why the left has a major advantage, which we'll get into shortly. Thread number 18, Matt Taibbi, who's the reporter that Elon Musk used as a conduit to release these threads, recounted that Twitter took, quote, extraordinary steps, close quote, to suppress the post October 14th, 2020 story, reporting on emails from Hunter Biden's laptop that implicated Joe Biden. See, the Hunter Biden laptop story is really a story about Joe Biden. Carl, why did you say that? Because Hunter Biden couldn't have made the business deals that he made were it not for his father being a senator, former senator, former vice president of the United States, and now the United States of America. I don't have any doubt, that Biden would continue this behavior. Now, to be fair, I don't have evidence that Biden is still continuing in this behavior. But when you're corrupt, you're corrupt. But I will go back to the Hunter Biden laptop story. All right. So here's what happened again. So they took extraordinary steps they did to suppress the New York Post story on October 14th, 2020. The social media company, according to Taibbi, even went so far as, quote, removing links and posting warnings that it may be unsafe, quote unquote. They even blocked its transmission via direct message. So if you wanted to share the Hunter Biden laptop story with a family member or friend that might have been leaning Biden and direct message them, nope, you weren't able to do that on Twitter. That's a tool that's normally reserved for child pornography. They don't allow people to disseminate child pornography, which is a good thing, obviously, on Twitter or to share it in direct messaging. And so that is a great thing. I wonder how the former Twitter execs feel about that now, because it seems like pedophilia is a big thing in the Democrat Party that they love now. Here's thread number 19. So Twitter locked then White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany out of her account for tweeting the story. Taibbi shared an email from then President Donald Trump's re-election campaign staffer. That was a guy by the name of Mike Hunt. So again, President Donald Trump's re-election campaign staffer, a guy by the name of Mike Hunt, noted that all McEnany did was, quote, cite the story and firsthand reporting that has been reported by other outlets and not disputed by the Biden campaign, close quote. Then President Trump's re-election campaign staffer, again, the gentleman Mike Hunt, said, I need an answer immediately on when, how she will be unlocked. He went on to say, at least pretend to care for the next 20 days leading up to the presidential election, obviously. And listen, guys, and forgive me, I'm doing a lot of reading during this podcast because I want to make sure, and obviously I will chime in with my own commentary, but I want to make sure that you are getting this from get to go, because this is a huge story. This story is illustrative of how important freedom of speech is. Guys, if we don't have the correct information and all of the information that we need leading up to the elections, whether it's the midterm elections or whether it's a presidential election cycle, to be able to make an informed decision. We could potentially vote ourselves into slavery. That's exactly what the Democrat Party is doing. They are making government bigger. They are making themselves smaller. That is the antithesis of our Constitution. All right. Matt Taibbi says there was tension between this is fascinating to me. So there was tension. There were two different teams that existed within, and they may still, I don't know, I don't think they need them with Elon Musk there, but there were two different teams that existed at the time in Twitter's offices. All right. So there was a communications policy team. All right. Who had less or little control over moderation. And then there's this safety and trust teams. You know what? Eric Holder, Barack Obama's old AG, came out with this safety and trust teams. A Revolver News reported on that last week. There was just so much news. I didn't have time to get to it. But this is what the left is doing inside of not just Twitter, but a lot of corporations, creating these safety and trust teams. And their goal is basically to silence conservative voices within their companies, outside of their companies, etc. That's what their goal is ultimately. All right. So just so you know, there's tension. You got it. This is very important. There are some common sense, even though Twitter is overwhelmingly Democrat, ran by Democrats, there is some common sense that still existed within the Twitter organization. And there was some infighting going on. Again, the communications policy teams, teams which seem to have common sense. And then there were just the radicals, the leftist crazies that existed on the safety and trust teams. So public policy executive Carol Strums sent out a WTF query. I think we all know what F means. And she shared Taibbi shared a message from her, and she said, "Are you able to take a closer look here?" Close quote. And the analyst responded that the user was bounced by site integrity. And what she was asking when she said, "Are you able to take a closer look here?" She was like, basically, she was asking the question, is this legitimate? Should we be banning this story? Should we be erasing this story, basically? So an analyst responded, the user was bounced by site integrity for violating our hacked materials policy, close quote. See, we still don't know what sparked the censorship. We don't know if the FBI came in like they did with Zuckerberg when it came to the Russia collusion hoax and said, hey, be on the lookout for this kind of stuff. We don't know. We don't know what sparked it, but we know that Twitter, the executives at Twitter, particularly Vahaya Gadden, I believe is how you pronounce her name, is, she's the one that shut down Trump's Twitter feed, his Twitter page, just shut it down, made the decision to shut it down. Here's a quote from Taibbi, Matt Taibbi, again, the reporter. This is the reporter that Elon Musk fed the threads to. He reported on them. He broke them up succinctly to put them on Twitter. So Taibbi says, although several sources recalled hearing about a, quote, general warning from federal law enforcement that summer about possible foreign hacks, there's no evidence that I've seen of any government involvement in the laptop story. So we simply don't know. We don't know if the FBI got involved, the DOJ. We don't know. The decision was made at the highest levels of the company, but without the knowledge of CEO Jack Dorsey. So let me just finish reading the quote. With former head of legal policy and trust, Vahaya Gad, playing a key role. She spells her last name Gadde. All right. So CEO Jack Dorsey, who we were all looking at on Capitol Hill, looking like he was strung out with his nose ring and just like, what the heck is this dude doing? Apparently, he knew nothing about this. The company had just gotten out of control. It had gotten too big. CEO or former CEO Jack Dorsey admitted this. It grew too big, too fast. He wasn't able to control it. This wasn't a guy that was a businessman. This was a guy that invented a great idea, a great concept, a great app called Twitter. And he didn't, to explode the way that it did, I guarantee you the guy was just like, hey, he wasn't expecting this. So he brought in all these people, a board and, people to run the place, and they were just running it without him. He was just apparently the figurehead or the face for Twitter. but not really involved in the day-to-day, as you see Elon Musk is. Here's another thread. Taibbi quoted one former employee who said of the decision to to dump the Hunter Biden or censor the Hunter Biden laptop story, they just freelanced it, close quote. No one had the courage to reverse their wrong decision because ultimately they figured out within a very short period of time they had made the wrong decision. So here's what the employee reportedly added. Hacking was the excuse, but within a few hours, pretty much everyone realized that wasn't going to hold. They knew that it wasn't a hack. They knew that the story could be verified, but they had already done the deed. They had already done the damage. So they did not have the courage to reverse it or decided to just stick with it. Here's what a more sensible communications staffer by the name of Trenton Kennedy said within Twitter. He said, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for making this as unsafe. And I think the best explainability argument for this externally would be that we're waiting to understand if this story is the result of hacked materials. We'll face hard questions on this if we don't have some kind of solid reasoning for marking the link unsafe. So here's a guy that's at least trying to express or to convey some common sense. And guys, listen, we got to have a good reason for this. Now, granted, everyone caved, everybody continued to censor the story, but just so that you understand, there was some internal infighting, which I think is promising because perhaps there are more liberals out there that would be willing to stand up for free speech. If you exist, please do. Please start doing it. It's extremely important if we're going to keep our democratic republic where everyone can be involved in the political square or the towns and the town square, if you will. But we vote for representatives to represent our views. If that's going to continue, we have to have free speech. Here's another quote from Taibbi. By this point, everyone knew this was effed. Said one former employee, but the response was essentially to err on the side of continuing to err. Here's what Yoel Roth was Twitter's then safety chief. Now, again, remember, the communications team were the common sense people with inside of Twitter. Then you have this safety. What are they called? The safety and something or another. Oh, man, now I lost it. Anyway, you had the safety and trust. I think it was called safety and trust team. All right, so the safety and trust team, I'll call it, within Twitter, they're the radicals. They're the nuts, all right? They're the lefties. And they said, here's what Yoel Roth, one of the lefties, one of the nuts inside of Twitter said. Yoel Roth, Twitter's then safety chief cited, quote, hacked materials, close quote, as a policy rationale, but noted that this is, and I'm quoting, this is an emerging situation where the facts remain unclear. So the facts remain unclear, just so you get that. The facts remain unclear, but they decided to censor the story anyway. This according to Yoel Roth. I don't think he or she, I'm not sure if it's a he or she, knows that they're exposing themselves. The quote continues, given the severe risk here in lessons of 2016, we're erring on the side of including a warning and preventing this content from being amplified. What happened in 2016? Oh my God. Trump won the election and he played the media like a freaking fiddle. I remember going back to 2016. I'm sure you did as well. At the time, I was a big time Ted Cruz supporter and I was sitting there pissed at the time, right? Because I didn't think Donald Trump was going to be the Donald Trump that he was in office. So I was sitting there pissed that the media and social media was giving this guy all of this free airtime, essentially helping him to become the nominee of the Republican Party. Now, don't get me wrong. Trump had a strong base, people that absolutely loved him and that were going to vote for him. But you would be lying to yourself if you did not admit that social media and the news networks, they got so much attention, so many ratings from having Trump on that they just decided to just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. And they didn't give anyone else near the amount of press because they wanted the ad dollars. So Trump played them like a fiddle, played them like a violin, if you will. All right. So that was the lesson. Trump won in 2016. We got to make sure that we don't get the candidate that we don't want. So we're going to use America's preeminent town square to make sure that Trump doesn't win. That's essentially what this person is saying. Then the VP of Global Communications, a guy by the name of Brandon Borman, he was vice president of Global Communications, asked, quote, "Can we truthfully claim that this is part of the policy?" Close quote. Again, you see this communications team that seems to have more common sense. They're the ones that are going to have to communicate what's going on, right? And it's just not adding up to them. Then you have Jim Baker. Jim Baker, he was then the Twitter deputy counsel or attorney, basically, but he was also a former attorney in the freaking BI. So now he's working for Twitter. Well, he was part of the Russia collusion hoax. It's amazing. It's amazing. So here's what Jim Baker, then deputy counsel, wrote that, quote, "Caution is warranted," close quote. He suggested Twitter assume, quote unquote, that the materials may have been, quote unquote, hacked, even as he noted that, quote, "some facts," quote unquote, indicated, quote, that the computer was either abandoned and or the owner consented to allow the repair shop to access it for at least some purposes. Okay, so some facts. So the owner consented to allow the repair shop to access it for at least some purposes, but they should assume that it's hacked? This doesn't even add up. These are supposed to be smart people. This is an attorney. No. This is a hack. This is a propagandist that happened to be working at Twitter. That's who Jim Baker really was. But Twitter staffers didn't seem to care. They don't care about the First Amendment. Even Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, expressed concern. He said, Matt Taibbi, one of the threads was Representative Ro Khanna, again, a Democrat from California, who alerted Twitter to the, quote, "huge backlash this move had been generating," quote unquote, after backlash, "this move had been generating among members of Congress on the issue of speech," quote unquote, as in free speech. All right. So then Vahaya Gad, she was the lady directly under running the company, or the major, trust. What was she? The head of legal policy and trust for Twitter at the time. Here's what she said. She said, Gad replied, noting that McEnany's account was, quote, "was not permanently suspended. We requested that she delete the tweet containing material that is in violation of our rules, and her account is restricted until she complies." This chick loved having power. Loved having power over the White House, if you will. So Vahaya Gad, the legal expert, basically, the head of the chick that's head of the legal policy and trust for Twitter, loved having the power over the White House. Vahaya Gad said, noted that Twitter, quote, "put out a clarifying threat of tweets earlier this evening to explain our policy around the posting of private information and linking directly to hacked materials." These people either didn't care or know about the First Amendment. And honestly, I think they don't care. I take that back. I don't know that it's that the left doesn't care as much as they believe that free speech or the First Amendment means they speak and you shut up. And as crazy as that sounds, I'm serious about that. I'm just not sure. Here's how Congressman Khanna, a Democrat from California, responded to Vahaya Gad or Gaddy or whatever, Jade. "But this seems a violation of the First Amendment principles." This is a Democrat in California. "If there is a hack of classified information or other information that could expose a serious war crime, and the New York Times, their homies, was to publish it," he says, "I think the New York Times should have that right." So here is a guy that acts, a Democrat, no less, in California, that happens to believe in the First Amendment. And he's admitting, dude, New York Times, those are my peeps. If they were coming out with a story, I would want it printed So the same should be true for those on the right. Props to this guy. A journalist, he says, should not be held accountable for the illegal actions of the source unless they actively aided the hack. So, to restrict the distribution of that material, especially regarding a presidential candidate, seems not in the keeping of the principles of the 1964 Supreme Court case, New York Times versus Sullivan. This guy is smart. Not used to that on the Democrat side. Khanna continued, I say this as a total Biden partisan and convinced he didn't do anything wrong, but the story now has become more about censorship than relatively innocuous emails, and it's become a bigger deal than it would have been, quote unquote. Now, I'm not so sure about that, and I'll tell you why, but I give props to this guy for having, for thinking in the way in which he was. This was a guy by the name of Carl Szabo, spelled SZABO, of the research firm NetChoice, sent Twitter staffer, another staffer, Lauren Culbertson, an email with the results of a quick poll involving congressional staffers. So I want to pause here. I told you I would bring up this topic of staffers again. So Carl Szabo of the research firm NetChoice sent Twitter staffer Lauren Culbertson an email with the results of a quick poll involving congressional staffers. All right. The survey suggested that a, quote, bloodbath, quote unquote, would await the company in congressional hearings, and that the 9 Republican staffers said this is a tipping point. It's just too much, quote unquote. Now, here's the reason why I say that. The staffers seems to know the inner workings of Twitter. They seem to be communicating. Where the hell are the congressmen? Seriously, where the hell are the congressmen? Republican or Democrat? Where are they? Here's some common sense Democrat staffers. One staffer said the scandal represented, quote, Tech's Access Hollywood moment, and it has no Hillary to hide behind, close quote. Another said Tech is screwed, and rightfully so. These are Democrat staffers. Oh, I'm sorry. No. These are Republican staffers. Forgive me. And then here's what the leftist staffers on the Hill, they basically didn't give a damn about the censorship. They expressed that the censorship hadn't gone far enough. So you have staffers that work for Democrats saying this didn't go enough. You have Republican staffers saying, hey, this is Hillary's Access Hollywood thing. Still, they don't seem like they're fond of Trump, even though they're Republican staffers. And then you have the left that, hey, censorship, it hasn't gone far enough. So you have staffers that do most of the work on the Hill, relaying to senators and relaying to congressmen, hey, this stuff doesn't go far enough. And those dummies that hardly ever read anything, okay, we'll just go with what the staffer said. Here's a quote, I believe, from Matt Taibbi. No, this is from the guy, Carl Szabo, of the research firm NetChoice. He said, in their mind, social media doesn't moderate enough harmful content. So when it does, like it did yesterday, it becomes a story. If the companies moderate more, conservatives wouldn't even think to use social media for disinformation, misinformation, or otherwise. So they wanted these people, they wanted conservatives, they wanted Republicans censored even more because they said they were spreading disinformation, misinformation, or otherwise. Elon Musk, what he did is so huge because he has just proved, no, actually it was big tech. It was and it was DNC, and it was the corporate media that were the ones that were spreading the disinformation. That's why this story is so freaking huge, and we can't just run past it. Carl Szabo, again, of this NetChoice research firm, said, when pushed on how the government might insist on more tech moderation consistent with the First Amendment, the Democrat staffers demurred. The First Amendment isn't absolute. They don't believe it's this. This is who we're dealing with on the Hill. It's not just the people that are in office. I'm telling you, those staffers inside of Washington, D.C., they need to be cut down to size. They should have a minimum staff, what they need to get the business done. They need to cut down the size of bills and legislation so they don't have to have all of these staffers working on the Hill. It's absolutely insane. You get a bunch of these youngsters coming fresh out of college or just straight up left-wing wackos that are sitting there, and they are the ones dictating the agenda to some of the congressmen, to the senators, and I wouldn't doubt to even Joe Biden. Man, Taibbi noted that Twitter's Hunter Biden move followed an increasing censorship trend. He says, while, quote, some of the first tools for designing speech were designed to combat the likes of spam and financial fraudsters, outsiders started petitioning the company to manipulate more speech. So outsiders from Twitter started saying, hey, guys, censor these fools on the right. What are we doing here? This shouldn't be about fraud and, just like, financial matters or spam. Let's censor the other side. Meanwhile, this is supposed to be a neutral platform. Threads 7 and 8, Matt Taibbi cited an exchange between Twitter executives where one sent a list of items to review from the Biden team, and the other would reply, quote, handled these. Listen to that. An exchange between Twitter executives where one sent a list of items to review from the Biden team and the other would reply, handle these. So the Biden team would send in some request for Twitter to handle to make sure the story was centered. Hey, we got you. Twitter, essentially, we got you. Man, again, this story, what broke on Friday is huge. The media isn't talking about it. MSNBC, CNN, CBS, they're not talking about this story because it exposes them as the frauds that they are, collecting a paycheck for doing jack squat. Man, the system wasn't balanced between Biden and Trump, the Trump team and the Biden team. And I'll explain to you what I mean. Although Twitter received an honored request from both teams. All right, Carl, see, it's fair. Both teams were sending requests or demanding requests or asking requests of Twitter, the Twitter execs. Trump was too. Team Biden was. Here's the problem. The system wasn't balanced, according to Matt Taibbi, but rather, quote, based on contacts, close quote, and Twitter staff lean heavily Democratic. Twitter staff long have leaned left with 99% of their donations going to Democrats in the 2022 midterms. So, all right, so Trump reaches out to Twitter, 1% chance that requests will be made. A Democrat or Biden reaches out to Twitter, 99% chance requests will be made. That's not an imbalance. One side is non-existent, the other isn't. All right, today's revelation, this is from Kara Frederick. Kara Frederick, the director of the Heritage Foundation's Tech Policy Center. We've had her on before. You can go through and scroll. Honestly, I think one of our first podcasts, or amongst the first podcasts that we started early this year, we had Kara Frederick on of the Heritage Foundation. And it's ironic, she was explaining exactly what needed to be done if Elon Musk was to take over Twitter. She's been great. She's been great on this issue, but she says today's revelations demonstrate once again that the big tech is an ideological monopoly policing Americans' speech. She's absolutely right. She goes on to say big tech's control of information and access to the digital space undermines free speech, interferes in our elections, and jeopardizes U.S. national security. She's right. Undermines free speech, of course. Interferes in our elections, of course. If this story was leaked, I'm going to give you some numbers in just a second here. Undermines our elections or interferes with our elections and jeopardizes U.S. national security. Guys, can you say that America is a lot less safer with Joe Biden in office? If you say no, you're lying. Everything they said would happen under Trump is occurring under Joe Biden. Xi Jinping is on the march. Vladimir Putin is on the march. I understand that we're beating him back by funding a proxy war against them with Ukraine, while our NATO allies hardly do jack squat. I totally get that. But nonetheless, the world is on fire. Kim Jong-un sampling missiles yet again with ICBMs. Their missile campaign seems to be getting better and better. Kara Frederick goes on to say Musk has done what lawmakers should have already accomplished, exposing big tech companies as foot soldiers for the progressive left. She goes on to say, when Americans believe the 2020 presidential election outcome would have changed given information deliberately hidden by the left with the help of big tech, apologies from former Silicon Valley executives will not cut it. She's absolutely right. We need some accountability. Here's what Media Research Center said. Although it is impossible to know what would have happened had Twitter not suppressed the post reporting on the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, a Media Research Center poll conducted in the days after the 2020 election found that 36% of self-described Biden voters said they were not aware. 36% of Biden voters were not aware of the evidence behind the claims that Joe Biden was personally involved in his son Hunter Biden's business deals with China, a claim bolstered by emails found on Hunter's laptop. And think about this. If you go back to the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump at the time, and Donald Trump was bringing this information up. Now, and it wasn't like he was overwhelming the debate with this information, but he was just speaking to the information that was being released and Joe Biden's corruption. His audience, Joe Biden's audience, didn't know what he was talking about. Joe Biden's audience had no clue what Trump was talking about. They probably thought Trump was making stuff up on stage. That's the power that big tech has. So even if you're not tech savvy, and I'm not the most tech savvy person, you have to understand the importance of these social media giants. They have become the public square. It's where most people go to communicate. People use their cell phones. Yes, they call family and friends and stuff like that. But if you want to communicate in the public square, you're using social media. Man, unbelievable. 13% of those voters, 4.6% of all Biden voters in a sample said that if they had known the facts, they would not have voted for Biden. Man, that shift could have changed the election. If you go back to the votes in the swing states, Trump only lost the votes in the swing states by 40, 50,000 votes, somewhere in that area, somewhere in that range. Kara Frederick of the Heritage Foundation closes out by saying, Americans should not have to rely on billionaires to deliver this necessary transparency. Constrain big tech's pernicious practices. It is past time for aggressive reforms and proper oversight to ensure the big tech is held accountable. All right, Carl. Well, what does that mean? Listen, these big tech companies have to be busted up. They're too big. I didn't believe in that before. I do now. They're too big. When these companies can be used to try to undermine our freedoms in America, as if they're in charge, as if they can circumvent the will of the people, they become more powerful than the federal government. Now, the Democrat Party seems to get them in check because the Democrat Party, you can believe what they say. When the Democrat Party says, we're going to investigate you, we're going to investigate you. When we're going to make you pay, we're going to make you pay. When Republicans say it, it's like, yeah, right, whatever. See you at next year's Christmas party. They don't believe the Republican Party. The Republican Party is too freaking weak. That has to change yesterday, or this country will go down the tube quick, fast, and in a hurry. And we're already slowly twirling around the toilet bowl. It's absolutely insane where we are. If you think of this and what happened with Apple CEO Tim Cook and literally getting rid of that open app, that file sharing app on the iPhone, the AirDrop system on the iPhone, so the protesters in China could not share information. Oh man. It is time to do some. It is time to break up these companies. They've gotten too big. Let's break up Apple. Let's break up Twitter. Let's break up Google. I'm sorry. Well, Twitter. It looks like Twitter is being broken up by Elon Musk. But it doesn't matter. Even though Elon Musk is on our side, God forbid, he sells, he moves on, whatever it may be. All right. We have to make sure we cut these companies down to size, and they have to be considered common carriers. They, just like telephone companies, they have to be completely neutral. Anyone can buy their products and they can't discriminate against anyone. These companies have to be treated the same way. There's an Apple Open Apps Markets bill where the apps need to be open for everyone to be able to create apps, and it goes on further and in more detail. But we've got to open these things up. We got to take control of these big tech companies. They've got to be treated as common carriers, or else they're going to run roughshod over us. They're going to destroy the country, because all that's happening is these Silicon Valley left-wing organizations, these platforms, social media platforms, or Google or Apple, they're hiring all these people out of these colleges and universities that have been indoctrinated with left-wing radicalism, and they're running the country. It can't continue. Guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I know this was a little in-depth, but I wanted to make sure that you knew this situation, the ins and outs of Twittergate, if you will. So anyway, I appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe to the podcast wherever podcasts are found. You can go to Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Please subscribe to my YouTube and Rumble page. You can go to thecarljacksonshow.com, SalemPodcastNetwork.com. You can go there as well, and I would certainly appreciate if you do go there. If you're listening in Georgia, please go out and vote for Herschel Walker. I'll do a short tomorrow. Maybe I'll do it later today, but I'll do a short on why we need to vote for Herschel Walker. It is so crucial that we get that 50th seat. We've got to be able to apply pressure on Sinema and Joe Manchin like we did. We need to make sure that there's equal representation on the chairmanships in the Senate. We need to be sure that if Kamala Harris needs to be the tie-breaking vote, there's a lot of pressure for her to do so, where the American people are paying attention, right? Whatever decision might, or whatever piece of legislation might be going down the pipe. It's very, very, very important that we get that 50th seat, that we get back to where we were. No thanks to Mitch McConnell. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please take advantage of the deals leading up to Christmas at MyPillow.com. Use my name as the promo code, MyPillow.com. Click on that radio listener square. Use my name, Carl, or give them a call, 1-800-858-0263. And until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.